Good evening and welcome to the NEETwork. This is part 2 of our NEET philosophy episode dealing with normies. If you haven't listened to part 1, maybe go and give it a listen, and then this episode will make a bit more sense.
You mentioned earlier the normie outline being go to school, get good grades, go to college or trade school, get a job,
Right.
get married, etc.
Uh-huh.
And I think you might agree with me. I think college is a huge waste of time and money.
College, like every passing year, is basically becoming a scam.
It's basically all it's done is become a diploma printing agency. It has hyperinflated the value of I guess it's hyper deflated the value of diplomas by inflating the number of diplomas.
Yeah, the diplomas are inflated. The value of a diploma is deflated.
It's like, oh, you have a diploma, a bachelor's of science? Cool. Get in line.
Right.
Do you have any real world experience? And that's become painfully obvious.
Bachelor's degree, 5 years experience minimum.
And I know my philosophy on it is, wow, I really just wasted 4 years and several $1,000s to get a bachelor's of science that really all it did for me is help me avoid the production line.
Pretty much.
That's all it did.
I'm a bit ashamed to admit it, but I pretty much wasted my GI Bill on a liberal arts degree and didn't even end up finishing. But that last year I would have had to go to school to finish that liberal arts degree. It would have cost, I think, like the equivalent of an entire Tesla of money when you kind of take into account all of my bills and tuition and books and all of that. And I think this was a screen cap of a tweet that I saw. It was talking about, 50 years ago, I think something like 350 hours of minimum wage work was required to pay off a college degree. And now it's something like 4,500 hours of minimum wage work will pay off a bachelor's degree.
Right. I mean, it took me I would say about my first year of working a real job, maybe closer to like 10 months, to pay off my bachelor's. And that's after having my entire first 2 years paid off by a bond my great grandmother got for me.
Right.
So I would say I was even given a more kind of a better start, a luckier position between scholarships, which
I did have a couple savings bonds, but like those savings bonds were, let's see, they were essentially sized for college 50 years ago. They might have paid for a college degree in the 60s.
right.
Now they would have paid for not even one semester.
The cookie cutter, this is how life should be, doesn't work anymore because it hasn't taken into consideration how times have changed and how value of things has changed.
Absolutely. It doesn't even necessarily take into account that some people just don't want to do it. Some people don't want to be ordinary.
Right.
Right? They want to live, they wanna have adventure. They don't wanna, I don't know, have that settle down, throw your roots down kinda lifestyle.
Right.
And oddly enough, that's kind of that might actually be what a lot of NEETs want. They just really want to be left alone and live their lives without having to worry about work or, normies bothering them.
Right.
And that's fine, but I want some adventure, I want some travel. I wanna go hunt some treasure. Wouldn't that be rad?
You can go to Oak Island. They've been searching for, a decade. Still haven't found anything. So here's my philosophy.
Mhm.
This is kind of personal to me.
Alright.
I'm not married to the idea of becoming a NEET. I'm not married to like having a different lifestyle just because being different sounds better. I'm not married to the idea of having, all the free time in the world. I mean, it definitely has its benefits. It sounds great.
All right.
Ideally, I would love to be, at the value of today's six figures in a small town by the time I'm 30.
And that's fine.
Like, I want money that would just last me forever. And that sounds like an easy way to enjoy my lifestyle. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's going to pan out. And if it doesn't pan out, I'll probably be like, well, what's even the point? If I can't make it up to that by the time I'm 30, why even bother trying?
Well, I mean, if you don't make it by 30, you'll probably make it by 40.
And in which case, is it even worth it at that point? Because now I'm always in pain.
Oh, you're not always in pain at 40. You're just officially old.
Yeah, well, the death of your youth starts at 30.
That's true. Let's see. You're in your early 20s, is that correct?
I am in my mid 20s.
Okay. Well, I would think the way you're working at it now, you should be at least almost there by the time you hit 30. The mistake I made was when I was your age, I wasn't making any preparations to hit 30, and back then I was in the military and in college on the GI Bill. I could have really been making great preparations, and now I'm kicking myself for not having done it. I just didn't really have the mind to back then.
Right. And, not everybody has the idea of what they want to do.
I think back then I was actually like, I might call that my doubling down on the normie mindset phase, where it's like, oh, I'll just work my butt off in the military and get a college degree and it'll be fine. And then I realized at some point during my college years that this wasn't working. This wasn't what I wanted. And your goal doesn't seem all that astronomical. It seems fairly modest, and I would think having a modest goal would be much easier to attain than, say, a guy like me who wants to be a jet setter.
Right. What I want to do is be able to raise a family in a similar situation that I was raised. Not particularly, like exorbitant, but also
Yeah,
not uncomfortable or tight.
yeah.
That's what I want. That's all I want, actually. I want to be able to have my house, have a happy family with a couple of kids, and is that too much to ask?
It No, it really isn't. And I think in the way what I'm about to say next kind of, well, like, it'll tie both of our goals together is if you're spending 2/3 of your time at some job, you simply don't have time to enjoy that lifestyle that you built for yourself. You pretty much don't have time to live a normal life if you or if you work full time. Your existence is essentially working.
I think that ties into the question of why you wouldn't want to be a normie.
Yeah.
Is because you're not really living the lifestyle you want. You're living unless you want to work. I mean, I guess there are people like that out there.
If you really want to be a normie, there's nothing we can do or say about it. You're not hurting us. Just don't tell us how to live our lives,
When back in my day, people worked for a living.
right?
It kind of brings up the question: do you ever feel pain when people kind of make fun of you for that kind of thing, like wanting to be like a NEET? Do you ever kind of grind your gears a little bit when they make fun of you for it, or like,
I've never revealed my power level in that way to other normies. I think the only person I've really ever had that conversation with apart from you is my mom, who is like a diehard you should be a normie kind of person.
really?
Yeah.
And what was her take on that?
She basically just thinks it's impossible.
For my parents, I remember we were having a really rough time at my job, and I was basically like coming home every day, napping right after work until like 7 o'clock, just like dead every single day, and it was just getting worse and wasn't worth it. And I would basically tell them like, I don't want to work anymore. I hate this freaking job. And my mom would
Mm.
be like, well, you should be grateful that they're even,
Ugh,
providing you like work.
I hate that.
And, my dad would be like, I mean, we can start looking elsewhere. And it just,
One of those is better than the other, but neither of them is good.
I like the dad's approach. All he wants me to do is really, he just wants me to be able to support myself. I can see it from his eyes. But man, I hate the you should be grateful perspective. I hate that so much.
Ugh, God, that is the one that makes me, like, feel pain.
But I can confirm that that has basically like 180'd since the election.
Oh, really?
Yeah. For one reason or another, my mother has flipped the story and just determined that you know what? Working's not even worth it anymore.
The only winning move is not to play.
Exactly.
Very interesting.
But yeah, so like that kind of question that I get all the time is really painful for me. And it really makes me wonder like why should I bother working? Like I go to my job, I would work really hard, and then, you know, I present my ideas to upper management, and they pretty much like don't do anything with it. Take no action. If they take no action, they can make no mistakes. And of course that leads to like nothing getting done.
That is very interesting. I can't say I've ever been in that kinda situation where I guess the company makes money to do nothing.
I swear to God, we have the most expensive meetings, where we have like 5 or 6 executives with six-figure salaries chilling in a conference room for like 4 or 5 hours, and they
Wow.
make that meeting costs the equivalent to what I make in a year.
My experience is that, um, I'm working mostly, like, I guess, entry-level type jobs, and my experience is largely that I pretty much just show up and then wait to punch the clock at the end of the day. I'm literally wasting time at work. This job and like the last job I worked, I think were the only jobs where you got to go home once the work was finished.
Why bother working, man?
I can't remember where I heard this, but I've heard at least one person say, it's just 8 hours a day. It's not that bad. It's just a third of your day. And I worked at Lowe's for like a summer, and I'm like, it's not 8 hours, is it? It can be like the amount of time I physically spend at work can be up to 9 hours, but then I'm doing all of this other stuff that relates to
The
work.
work preparations, like becoming presentable.
Yeah, you might spend, uh, let's just say if you went pretty fast, about an hour getting ready for work, and then let's just say a half hour getting to work, then 8 hours of working, an hour of breaks and lunch, and then another half hour getting back, and then maybe another hour just unwinding from work. And I, I wasn't like doing the math in my head. I think that's 12 hours total.
Yeah, I mean, I at least spend 13 hours every day
Mhm.
either at work or recovering from it. 4 days a week. So, like, I go to work for 10 hours, and I come back, and typically, I'm so exhausted that I take a 3-hour nap almost every time.
And it's so weird. Even on days where you do nothing, you come home and you're exhausted, right? You ever had that experience?
Oh, almost all the time. I know a lot of times, a lot of the work on my kind of shelf, it either stacks up really heavy or it's really slow. And even on the
Mhm.
slow days, it just feels like, I'm not allowed to have my phone or anything. Not really supposed to be watching videos either. So it feels like I'm just kinda sitting there. A lot of times you just got a question of, "Is this really worth what I'm getting out of it?"
What I've read about a lot of seniors is that, well, I've actually heard this from at least one person, but what I've read is that it's the number one regret of seniors on their deathbed is that they worked too much and they didn't spend enough time enjoying their life or pursuing their interest. And I don't know how many naysayers actually listen to this podcast, but this is what I want to ask you. Do you want to be that person? do you want to look back on your life and see that you wasted most of it in an office or in a warehouse? I didn't think so.
Leave a comment.
Yeah, leave a comment.
Let us know what you think.
Yeah, are you a normie who disagrees with us? We want to know. But to you normies who leave a comment, we kind of know what you're going to say anyway. At least a few things that you might say, but you're more than welcome to surprise us.
We've likely heard most of the arguments several times.
Yeah, absolutely. From the normies in our lives. And you mentioned it before, Dexter, the hard work makes you feel good argument.
Right. And I would argue that not everyone gets that satisfaction. I know after like doing a hard job, sometimes it's satisfying and then sometimes it's like, man, I really did not want to do this at all.
For me, I've definitely at my current job felt a sense of satisfaction from completing a hard day of work and maybe like, oh, I deserve that trip to Burger King and get some chicky nuggies. But I can't help but feel kind of gypped, kind of ripped off by the fact that, I don't know, someone else profited much more from my labor than I did. And when I work hard on my own projects, I feel much better. I feel much more accomplished.
Well, as a counter argument, would you say that someone profited much more off of your chicky nuggies than you did?
Probably. But they only made like what, $2?
Probably.
Let's see. If I make 17 an hour and I work for or 17 an hour, let's see, that would be how much would it be to make $2? Let's just say 10 minutes. 10 minutes of work I would say is worth a thing of chicky nuggies. And yeah, someone absolutely profited from me purchasing those chicky nuggies, but the guy who sold them to me pretty much didn't.
Right. He probably profited off of like handing them to you, but that's about it.
Like that $2 chicky nuggie, he probably got about 5 cents.
Right. About the distance between the window and your car's worth, so to speak.
This is something I was thinking about. I forgot to put it in the notes, but and well, this is probably a better example is a personal example of mine is where I worked at Lowe's in the outdoor equipment. Essentially, I was selling like lawnmowers, and those ride-on lawnmowers can cost like $1,500,
Right.
and I'd probably sell one or two a day. And I just think like in 10 minutes, I made more money than I would have been paid in a month.
Right. And I was mentioning earlier about the meetings that some of our executives have that they go for 6 hours and they make the equivalent to what I make in a year in those meetings. They at least make what I make in a month in an hour meeting.
I guess it was an interesting feeling like, oh, cool, I made a big sale, and then realized I'm not seeing any of that money.
Right.
And as far as hard work goes, what I understand, I don't know how true this is, but what I've read is that the good feeling you get from hard work is endorphins that your body is pumping into you to kind of push yourself through whatever misery you're in.
Right.
And I guess that's the same feeling you get when you work out. Is that the satisfied feeling you get when you work out is your body throws some endorphins into your bloodstream to get you to push through the exercise or to kind of in a way reward you for bettering yourself in a way.
Because maybe working out wasn't a part of our natural system, so it's more along the lines of like your body is rewarding you for pushing yourself maybe to catch prey, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably that's how it works. And you mentioned earlier, Dexter, the whole normies kind of resent NEETs because they're kind of like leeching off society.
Right.
Or like they'll say a lot of different words, like leech is a really common one, but I've heard parasite, I've heard loser, and pretty much all of these arguments boil down to one statement, and that statement is if you don't work, you're a bad person. What do you think of that?
I think that that's a very it's a good question. One argument that I could make towards that, not even an argument, one like contribution I could make towards that is me working and paying taxes for things like the infrastructure and whatnot that many NEETs are benefiting from. If I even really get anything out of that infrastructure, I mean, I guess I get something out of roads. A lot of times, the view might be that hey, they're benefiting and then not even having to pay into it to get benefits, and that's totally unfair. And I think personally, I know it's kind of like ironic to a degree because I know I would end up being, hypocritical of me to say because I know I would be exactly this kind of NEET. I do have a problem with NEETs that only play video games or like more of the shut-in kind of nobodies that you see. I think we see a lot of them in Japan, actually.
Yes, the hikikomori.
They sit on their pile of dakimakura.
There's definitely, I'm not gonna lie, there's definitely a lot of you definitely see a lot of degeneracy from the NEET community, and I don't know what to say about it. It is a thing. I would prefer they don't be degenerate.
I would say that those people, yes, they are bad people because they don't really contribute anything. I guess they buy games off of money that other people have made.
I guess, like, I would argue that, yes, they're not contributing anything, but we also don't owe society anything. Um, Society forced itself on us.
True, but at the same time, me as a working class person currently, I don't owe these NEETs anything. They aren't doing anything for me, but they're still getting a cut, be it small as it is.
I would say that it's not wrong if they're benefiting but not asking for it, maybe? Like, they're not demanding anything from you, they're just kind of there.
Well, in a degree, they are passively kind of demanding it. And again, this is only for people who I feel are not contributing anything. NEETs that I feel like are contributing things, be it some degree of entertainment. I know you mentioned the gym bro NEETs. I know a lot of them tend to have, like YouTube channels or things.
Yeah, they are entertaining.
They do provide hours of entertainment to a degree. A lot of them have really good information to pass along. And those are not necessarily bad people. They make something of themselves. It's the ones that lock themselves away and again kind of live in their layers of degeneracy that I think are bad people. I'm a shy person, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I can't be personable. I can't have a personality, things like that. What are your thoughts on that?
I disagree with you a little bit. I just don't think that a NEET who shuts themselves away is necessarily doing anything bad or wrong. They're not really hurting me if they also get to benefit from, say, the sidewalk that I walk on. It just happens to be that there's a sidewalk there and he can go use it. But he's locked away in his room, so he's not even really using the sidewalk.
Right, he's just taking a couple of, rubles off of the side of my paycheck.
Really, I would say that there's a much bigger parasite class of people, and those are the people at the top.
Yeah, the federal government.
The government, politicians who their job is to stand up in front of people and lie, essentially.
They've played the system to the point where they can literally benefit the most
Yeah.
and do the least, really.
They've used their money and influence to rig the game in their favor. If the politician's on your side, you don't consider them a bad person. You always consider the other politicians to be bad. At least that's what normies do.
It's not my side's fault, it's your side's. I mean, the way I see it, I look at the entirety of, Congress, for example, and they haven't done anything, pushed anything through, finished anything in, like, years, and they get paid, ludicrous salaries.
They've become millionaires off of us. And then there's you mentioned, like, I guess, entertainers, there's those guys. I mean, I don't consider these people to be leeches in any way, but there's like, actors and musicians,
Right.
right? The people who they like, no one would call them a leech, but I wouldn't say that they really do what we would consider to be work.
I would argue that acting to a degree is work. They're expected to be on call and like available for certain periods of time. They're expected to conduct themselves in certain ways. They're expected to look certain ways per their contracts. They're expected to act certain ways.
Yeah, and really, I don't know what the acting job is really like, so it's not like I'm speaking from any experience, but what I see of actors, they make millions of dollars to basically dress up and play pretend for a living. That's what I see of actors, and it's not like I have any hostility toward them. It's just like that's what you do.
Well, I don't know. I would say a lot of them put their blood, sweat, and tears into their jobs. I would say that's a little bit more than just playing pretend. I mean, you can even look at, like The Evil Dead. Uh, I think that was directed by Raimi, right? Sam Raimi. Well, he had his brother who was kind of working that position as one of the Deadites, and it was a very uncomfortable role. He had to dress in like 30 pounds of basically latex every session. Getting dressed in that basically ate like 6 hours of his day. It kind of goes back to our have you ever sat at work for just hours watching the time go by?
Right.
Yep. It's a lot like that, where he just watches the hours go by as someone else dresses him.
There is that aspect. I hadn't thought of that. You're absolutely right.
And one of the things is you can actually see it in the Evil Dead movie when he like turns his head a little bit. There's a bunch of liquid kind of pouring out of the ear.
Uh-huh.
That's actually his sweat
Whoa.
that's pouring out of his ear. He had to basically like hyperhydrate himself before every session
Whoa.
because you can't just take off all the latex because
Yeah.
that's 6 hours of application. And so he would sweat a ton. And yeah, in one of the scenes you can actually see it just pouring out of him.
And when I talk about actors in this way, I am kind of like being reductive, but it really isn't hostility. It's kind of like I almost admire them because they figured out the hustle.
Right.
And that's like what I'm kind of getting at. They make millions of dollars to I mean, I'm saying dress up and play pretend, but I mean, I'd rather make millions of dollars dressing up and playing pretend than make a minimum wage throwing boxes around in a warehouse.
Right. And a lot of them have the charisma to pull it off. I would say that not everyone is born to be an actor. You can look at many failed streamers and see that, some people just don't have the charisma for it.
I was thinking Tommy Wiseau.
I would argue that it actually worked out for him. He has so little charisma that it works.
Yeah, it looped around to him actually being charming. One final argument of about normies, and this is the one that pisses me off the most, or maybe not. I don't know. This one definitely pisses me off though, and I've heard this a lot. Is this is how we've always done it.
I hate okay,
Ugh.
I at my job, a lot of our systems are legacy, which means, oh, we've always done it this way and we're always going to do it this way. It's anti-progress and it's so annoying. I hate it. And I can only imagine like, well, we've always worked. So this is what we've always done, so we should always do this.
Right. And I've heard I was in the military. I heard this argument all the time that this is just how the military is, kid. Get used to it. And
Right.
my mother has done this a couple times. What she says is like that's life. That's reality and I'm like, "No. You are looking at a very tiny amount of reality if you think that's how the world works." If you really think about it, this concept, at least in terms of neatdom, is that the modern employer-employee relationship is very, very recent. Like, maybe only within the last 1,000 or so years. And I think, like, long, long ago, it was the norm that you were self-employed.
Right. A lot of people made their own hustles. They go to the other town to collect fruit to sell at your local one. Your original bankers who basically said, "Oh yes, I can keep all of your shekels safe in my metal vault downstairs."
Rubs hands.
Yeah, they'd rub their hands together.
I'm imagining kind of like the medieval village where there was just a guy who was the baker. He owned the bakery. He made they didn't exactly have money back then, but he made all of the profit from baking his bread. And there's a guy who was just the blacksmith, and he made 100% of the profit of his blacksmithing. And this argument of, oh, that's how they've always done it, is it kind of falls apart when you consider that a lot of really awful things like actual slavery were pretty much standard practice basically through all of human history. Again, slavery was the norm until very recently. And really, when you think about it, um, the first humans were neets. We were neets as cavemen, right?
Today I feel like hunting.
Grug
Grug want deer. Grug no want to eat rock.
Grug get chicky tendy. But yeah, they didn't have any formal education. There was no formal employment. It was just you and your bros going out to hunt mammoths. There was no like real trades. We don't really know that, but I think back in the caveman days, kind of everyone knew how to flint knap and work leather and stuff. It was just skills that everyone knew. The job was being a caveman.
I don't know if that everyone knew that. I think that was more specialized skill that you had to kind of spend time on.
Maybe. We don't really know, but I think at least things like flint knapping were really common knowledge. And you had the time to do it. Flint knapping is not easy. I've tried.
Is that breaking rocks into?
Yeah, you take pieces of flint or obsidian and you flake them into an arrowhead or a knife.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, first humans, neats. So arguably,
First Grugs were neats.
Grug go to cave and play Fortnite.
The modern day Grug
Yeah,
versus the prehistoric Grug.
right.
I think it sounds like we're kind of getting ready to close up here. I have a question. So this entire episode, we've kind of talked about NEET philosophy.
Uh-huh.
And it's kind of broken down into, do we kind of throw our lives away for X number of dollars an hour?
Uh-huh.
Does that mean the NEET's typical mindset, the typical philosophy of a NEET is dollars and cents? Is it like, what can I do to get the most out of my money? Or what would you kind of describe NEET philosophy as?
I've certainly thought about like how I can get the most out of my money, but that's kind of always been how I thought. Even when I was spending on frivolities, I was kind of like, how can I get the most out of my hobby or something like that. I think if you were to I'd maybe boil it down to one single statement about what neat philosophy is, it's neats want to make the most out of their time as opposed to, say, making the most out of their money.
Interesting. So it's not what do you think is the main thing that drives someone to being a NEET?
For me, honestly, it is kind of like a resentment toward society and the path that I've kind of been pushed down. But I think the drive to be a NEET is probably going to be a bit different for everyone. I can't say my drive is at all unique either. I'm sure lots of people are disillusioned with society, especially nowadays, and looking for something else.
I think that question applies to the viewers as well. What do y'all think? Leave a comment.
Yes, absolutely. Leave 20 comments.
Actually, leave a comment and then comment on that comment.
Yes. But also like.
And subscribe.
And hit the bell icon.
Don't forget to smash that bell icon.
Smash that bell icon.
Oh, man. But go join our raid Shadow Legends.
Yeah, go join our raid Shadow Legends, and what else? Thanks Kojima.
Kojima.
Yeah,
Just thank him.
yeah. Thank Kojima.
Yeah, Kojima. Thanks, bro. You really did it.
What a good guy.
I guess we're wrapping up the episode now. If
Right.
well, before we go, I actually want to give a shout out to a YouTube channel called Cloverlawn. He's a much bigger channel than ours, and he's kindly allow us to essentially shill our podcast on some relevant videos of his. So if you're listening, Cloverlawn, thank you so much. Your support is giving us that initial viewership we really need to get the podcast flying. I'd send some of our viewers your way, but I think most of the traffic is coming toward us. But check out Cloverlawn. He's a really interesting channel. And at least as far as that goes, that's all I got to say. Do you want to walk us out, Dexter?
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead. Good night, everyone. Stay comfy.
Stay comfy.